We have Mohamed Shehata, Chief Development Officer with Abu Soma Development Company. Welcome to the podcast. So I'm very curious to learn a little bit more about yourself.
I've been blessed with a very diverse career as well. I am Egyptian. I'm an engineer by profession.
Okay.
Civil engineer. So I started on project side.
What led you to engineering?
You want the honest answer?
Yeah, honest.
Lego. That I really felt a need to make an impact in my home country, in Egypt, and do something that I can be proud of. And in Egypt, or not in Egypt, everywhere, people use the word world class, which I don't like because it implies when we're talking about a local, whether it's Africa or Egypt specifically, that what exists in the rest of the world is better. So I always think, no, I want something better than world class. I want something that we can do in Egypt that is Egyptian class. Let's call it that.
What do you want to tell the Egyptian youngsters?
Learn from the experience of others. Take what you need, leave the rest. Add what you have. Be proud of who you are.
Welcome on Unplugged with GBB. I know we started off the conversation.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we just like that went into the conversation. We have Mohamed Shehata, Chief Development Officer with Abu Soma Development Company. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the event, and thank you for the time that you've been spending with us. The conversation is already very interesting. We hosted an event in Egypt, I told you. It's the one thing I also realized, and we talked about it within our team so much, that how many people have come back to Egypt. During the process of hosting the event at the Kempinski, obviously we're talking to so many companies and so many business owners and things like that. We saw this pattern of a lot of these youngsters who are studying in in the US and UK and all of it. Most of them were coming back. And we were also quite fascinated with the new capital city that is being built, which is sort of, in other side of the world is unheard of as to building new capital city in this age and time. And another fact that we found out was Egypt has been doing this once every some 600 years or something. New capital city is being built. We found this through research. So very interesting culture and heritage from an outsider point of view, and even our visits there were great. While we continue this conversation, Mohamed, I would like to have a quick background about yourself, story of yours. We already spoke about your different experiences, but I would like to understand. So you said you were in South Africa, then in Botswana and things like that. Then Dubai. So it's an experience which is spread across different countries across Middle East and Africa. Yeah. So I'm very curious to learn a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. I have been blessed with a very diverse upbringing, and I've been blessed with a very diverse career as well. I am Egyptian. I'm a proud Egyptian, but I wasn't born in Egypt and I didn't grow up in Egypt. I eventually ended up in Egypt. It drew me back somehow, but I started off, I grew up in Kenya and Botswana and South Africa, nice. So sub-Saharan Africa, and it is very much in my blood. And along the way, made a lot of friends from very diverse backgrounds. When I started my career,
So you speak Swahili then?
I used to at the time.
Okay.
I used to at the time. I've forgotten most of it, but it's very interesting. There's a lot of Arabic influence in Swahili, in fact. Yeah.
Okay.
When I started my career, I started with the Kharafi group of Kuwait.
that's your start itself in the real estate side of it.
That's where I started. Yes,
Nice.
I'm an engineer by profession,
Okay.
civil engineer. So I started on project side.
And you did engineering in Africa or
No, actually,
outside?
that was the only time I had ever lived in Egypt.
Okay.
So my father told me, "Why don't you go to America and study medicine?" And I was a stubborn teenager, so I went to Egypt and studied engineering.
Okay. And what led you to engineering?
You
At
want
that
the honest
age?
answer?
Yeah, honest.
Lego.
Wow.
I was that kid who always used to sit and build these Lego cities. And when I had the chance to decide on my career, it wasn't even a difficult decision. It was immediately.
That's a fantastic story.
But I also come from a family of engineers. So
Okay,
my parents
okay.
were both engineers. And, you know, when the kids are playing in sand pits, I was playing on the building sand pile on the construction site. I've been that kid. So it was a natural decision for me. My sister went the complete other direction. She's a homeopath. I think she had had enough with engineering surrounded by us. So when I started with Kharafi, it's a Kuwaiti-based company, but there was an Africa
Division to it.
division which operated pretty much autonomously. We were based in Botswana and then South Africa. The projects that I was lucky enough to be exposed to spread out throughout the continent. It was mostly hospitality development, and I very quickly progressed from projects to development. Just naturally asking, you know, when you're on a construction site and someone's giving you the design and telling you do this, I was like, but why? And you get into the design, and then, you know, somebody's telling you do the design like this, but why? And then you get into the development and the feasibility of the project, and suddenly you get a much bigger picture. And you know, I pride myself of throughout my career, I've been involved in the full life cycle of any project. It gives you just a broader view. We've done developments with Kharafi in South Africa, with Hyatt Resorts, Intercontinental in Dakar and Senegal.
Mostly been on the hospitality side of it.
Most of them were in the hospitality side. We did
They owned
Sheraton
all of
in
these,
Pretoria. Owned, yes. Most of them were management agreements, some of them franchise. A few that were non-branded hotels along the way, like bespoke brands. We built a very, very strong hotel development team. And then came a massive transformation, 2008, 2009, obviously the recession. And then this exceptional man who was single-handedly running the company, Nasser Al-Kharafi, may God rest his soul, passed away at the time. So the company really took a big knock. And at the time, we reverted to mainly contracting, which again was a very valuable experience for me, because we were doing mainly infrastructure projects throughout Africa, Tanzania, Malawi, Gambia, which was also an eye-opener, because most of our projects were rural, right? You're doing bridges and highways, and it gives you a lot of exposure, and it's very interesting dealing with the various African governments and getting insight into how, you know, money moves around, and you know, so that was also a very valuable experience. And then I got the opportunity to do quite a shift towards development in the Middle East, in Dubai. And I thought to myself, you know, how can I say that I'm at the top of my game if I'm not in Dubai? And I took up the role with Damak Properties, and it was a very, very valuable time of my life. I stayed with them for about 5 years, built a very strong relationship with the owner, Mr. Hussein Tajwani, who you know, I regard very highly and worked with very well. The projects that we were involved in first were in Dubai, a number of projects, your traditional Damak sort of hotel apartments type projects in some hotels. But then at the time, the direction was to open up new types of projects that were not your traditional hit and run sort of projects. So we started getting involved with projects far and wide, hospitality and some commercial. Like we were involved in, we were developing a couple of islands in the Maldives. We were even looking at Seychelles at some stage. And, it was a very enriching experience, both dealing with someone like Hussein Sajwani and really benefiting from being in the room with someone like him, but also the exposure to a completely different market, a very fast-moving market. So Africa had its challenges, of course, developing, five-star hotels in places where you can't
cannot
find
imagine.
bricks.
Yeah.
And then Dubai and the Middle East and Damak presented a whole other set of problems or challenges, let me call it. It was also a privilege to share the room with the best of the best from around the world, and I really enjoyed that time. And then came COVID. In fact, just about a year before COVID, I had left and started a company, or I was in the process of starting a company.
I saw that on your profile.
It was an interesting time because we were doing with good friends of mine who have a very successful company in South Africa,
Okay.
doing turnkey commercial projects.
Okay.
Offices.
The contracting side of it.
Design and build, so
Okay.
it's turnkey, and they have the main market share, and it's a very niche sort of market, and very competitive in South Africa, but they do extremely well. So we had our first project where we were going to do the Unilever offices in Johannesburg, and then start in Dubai with the same company. And I was in South Africa, and I remember my wife was calling and saying she was in Dubai, and she's like, I think you need to get on a plane and come back. They're going to close the schools. And I thought, come on, do you know what needs to happen for them to close the schools? And then it happened, and she's like, okay, now I really think you need to come back. They're going to close the airports. I'm like, come on, do you understand what needs to happen in the world for them to close airports? You're not making sense.
Yeah.
And I was flying back on the last flight, coming in from South Africa to Dubai. The flight was full, and we reached Dubai, and I walked out of that plane alone.
Wow.
I was the only person actually entering Dubai. Everyone else was transiting to go home. And I walked through Dubai airport.
The empty one.
From the plane to the luggage, and I didn't see a soul. It was completely empty. And I walked through all of the airport, and I got to the luggage carousel, and there was a single bag on the carousel. It was my bag, and I picked it up. And then we started the shutdown. Obviously, the whole idea of doing offices was in question, so we closed the company. And then came the opportunity to go home. A home that I couldn't really relate to, hadn't really lived in. And I jumped at the opportunity for several reasons. One of the main reasons was that I really felt a need to make an impact in my home country, in Egypt, and do something that I can be proud of. And in Egypt, or not in Egypt, everywhere, people use the word world class, which I don't like, because it implies, when we're talking about a local, whether it's Africa or Egypt specifically, that what exists in the rest of the world is better. So I always think, no, I want something better than world class. I want something that we can do in Egypt that is Egyptian class. Let's call it that. Yeah. So the whole feasibility and the decision, the sensible investor's decision would be to sell. And when he asked the question, how many jobs would this project create? Like, okay, 8 to 10,000. How long will the project last for? We'd estimate about 10 years. So he said, so you want me just for this X amount of money to deny 10,000 families their livelihoods over a period of 10 years? And the decision was to proceed with the project.
Wow.
And it was a very successful project. And So when you ask me what kind of investment is the right investment,
That kind of
it's this kind of investment. It is the investor who recognizes what Africa has to offer and recognizes what they have to offer to Africa, and to marry those two and to create sustainable investment and development opportunities that will span decades and will create a positive influence in the economy in which you're operating, because that's really what is a win-win.
That's a very compelling story about Karafi.
Absolutely.
And you knew the numbers on what is the sell value and how much would it
Of course,
cost and all that.
of course.
And even for you, it made sense. Selling off would be the ideal
Of course,
choice.
you know, as someone who's advising the investor, you have to advise based
That's
on
right.
numbers. It's very easy for you to say, you know, this is going to create this and that, but at the end of the day, most investors will say, how much money is it going to make me? And it is very rare to find the investor that will see the long-term benefits of a sustainable development model.
You know, I can sense with your story how these experiences have sort of shaped you.
Absolutely.
And how you look at giving back to your country, and also the fact that you told something like the med area, how you want to co-develop with other companies. It's very evident in the approach that you give. What's future for Abu Soma?
We're a very passionate developer. I always say that
You say so because?
we are a young, dynamic, passionate team. We've been very fortunate in that we have, you know, a number of individuals from our impressive CEO, who's a good friend, down to the person who's cleaning the offices. We've been very, very fortunate to build this organization over the years, and I always say it's beautiful the way it is, the Soma Bay Peninsula. It's our job not to mess it up. That's really our ethos. We are developing something that is, I'm not going to say world class, it's something that is exceptional. And we are, you know, looking at and strategizing the development from a point of view of sustainability, from the point of view of mobility, from the point of view of you know, really creating a destination that we're going to look back on one day and say, wow, we were lucky enough to be a part of this. Moving forward, we are looking at other destinations to develop.
Within Egypt or outside?
Both.
Okay, great.
Both. It's not at the stage where we're quite ready to share that yet, but we have opportunities that will materialize, inshallah, soon, both within Egypt and outside of Egypt. And the important thing, obviously, when we're expanding is to stay true to our DNA, and that's what we intend to do.
And with your journey, have you ever thought anything other than, and the mix of engineering background and then development, I see this is a very, I've met like 10 days ago, I was in Jeddah meeting with some people who are working on these developments in Saudi Arabia. And I met two very interesting people. Both of them are chief development officers, one for Alula and one for Asir Development Authority. They both again come from either design or engineering background, and they then moved into the development side of it. In the process, have you ever thought of any other, like if not for engineer and you know, on the development side, what else you think you would have been?
Interesting. Like I said earlier, when I was choosing my career, it wasn't even a choice. I went straight into what I'm passionate about, and I still am very passionate about this field. When we talk about development, you're more often than not talking to someone who comes from a marketing or sales background, because that's a very big part of development, right?
That's right.
But there is the other parts of the development. There is
creative
obviously
side.
the creative side. There's a technical element to it. There is a financial element, obviously, to it. and then there is the marketing and sales element to it. When you combine those, it's very important to have a balance. Obviously, nobody can have all three. You can not be an expert at all three, but I think having a balance is very important to creating the right product that you see through to the end, rather than just selling a dream and falling short of delivering that dream. And that's really what creates long-lasting, sustainable growth. Is you're selling a dream, you're delivering that dream, and for me, I'm very happy where I am. I would just explore ways to really innovate in this space. And innovation doesn't necessarily mean technology and leveraging off AI. Obviously, that's a big part of it. But I believe that innovating is innovating in terms of what is innovation? It's creating something new. So you go into a space such as where we are now developing coastal developments in Egypt, and you want to create something new. And new isn't necessarily, let's look at the most modern examples and try and emulate that. Let's look at what we have. Let's take advantage of that. Let's sort of like creating fusion in food with traditional dishes, that you just create new ideas and elevate them. That kind of thing. What can we do to elevate what we already have? So that for me is really development. Innovate in your product that will imitate and elevate the natural surroundings. Innovate in the way that you plan your master plans to take full advantage of the natural topography. Innovate where you're recognizing the kind of water sports that the Red Sea is famous for, and not building buildings, even though you're allowed to, that will block the wind and kill that. You can work around the wind and design for it to work in your favor. Innovate in terms of mobility, where people want to not have to drive their cars and go to places where you see in Egypt and elsewhere where there's just a sea of cars parked at the beach because everyone wants to get to the beach. Give people other opportunities where it's really a pleasant environment for using your bicycle or pedestrians or even light electric vehicles to easily move around, make it so convenient with the mobility. That's the kind of innovation that I think, I'm not giving you ideas that are completely novel,
but it's
implemented in the right way is easier said than done. And that's really what I'm passionate about. And that's what we're doing in Soma Bay.
Well, I wish you good luck on that thought process. And I really hope, because you've emphasized on not world class, but something extraordinary within the available resources that you have. I do really hope, and for sure I'll be at the Soma Bay and visit as well.
I look forward to that.
What do you want to tell the Egyptian youngsters who will take positions of the developmental role in the future, who are right now going through the process, and who will also contribute to the changes that are happening in Egypt? What do you want to tell them?
I would say, know who you are. Be proud of who you are. We have this expression in Egypt, عقدة الخواجة, which basically translates to the obsession with the foreigner. This whole idea of looking outside of Egypt and say, oh, they do this so much better. Let's do it like them. Learn from the experience of others. Take what you need, leave the rest. Add what you have. Be proud of who you are, and create your own identity, whether it's in architecture, whether it's in tourism, whether it's in technology. Create something that is yours, and success will follow.
Well, that applies to, I think, every facet of life in Egypt.
Absolutely.
Not, just the buildings part of it. It's been an interesting conversation, Mohammed. There's so much that I learned about you and your journey, and who
been a
better to
pleasure.
say the last statement you made. You've had the African, the Middle Eastern, and then again in Egypt. Who better to say what you're saying?
Well, thank you. I mean, I walked into this conference, thinking, okay, it's another conference, and I found myself perfectly matched to the subject of the conference. I came from sub-Saharan Africa,
Yeah.
born, not born, but bred, and went to the Middle East and now Egypt, and I really had the benefit of all of these experiences, and I really enjoyed being in a conference talking about Africa and the Middle East specifically.
Well, I enjoyed this conversation. I'm pretty sure whoever watches this also, especially your people from Egypt, whoever watches it, will enjoy the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I look forward to meeting you more and more. And whenever we're in Egypt, Somo Bay is a must visit.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Thank you. It's a
you,
pleasure.